Madiba spent almost 3 decades in jail, locked in solitary confinement on Robben Island. Newspapers were banned and letters from loved ones a rare treat.
So where did he find the inspiration to continue with his long walk to freedom?
He found it in the writings of another great thinker who came centuries before and from the other side of the world.
Written by Professor Ashwin Desai, Reading Revolution tells the story of the secret role that literature played on Robben Island, liberating the minds of the prisoners, even as they spent days in the stone quarries and nights in their cells.
For as long as he was physically able, Nelson Mandela lived an active lifestyle. Even as a senior statesman, he walked tall, but he also enjoyed exercising his mind, even though he was locked up on a cell on an island prison. Shakespeare may seem like an unlikely companion for a 20th century African revolutionary, but Professor Ashwin Desai has researched this unexpected connection, and I'm really looking forward to hear more of the story.
Shakespeare, Steinbeck and Tolstoy were among the authors whose works were smuggled into what the prisoners referred to as their university. Education became a means of mental liberation, and the book shows how they were inspired to use their time on Robben Island as an opportunity to broaden their skills and worldview, rather than allowing the circumstances of their confinement to break their spirits.
Ashwin Desai is a sociologist by training, but he's also played a significant role in tracing, documenting and analysing the history of Indians in South Africa, as well as indentured workers. He invariably manages to create a fresh perspective on the past, and this is no exception. Ashwin, welcome to Mela.
Thank you.
How did you find out about this volume that was circulated on Robben Island?
Well, a colleague of mine, Sunny Venkatratnam, we taught together at the old University of Durban, Westville, and he was a Robben Island prisoner. And we'd have a lot of discussions about politics and so on. And when he retired and was at home, he contacted me one day and he told me about this Shakespeare. Rumors of it had been circulating, but to actually see it and to feel it and to page through it and to see some luminaries who had signed off on the Shakespeare, I knew there was a story here.
How did it end up on the island?
Well, he received it from his family, but it would have been confiscated. But he was clever enough when he got Diwali cards. He stuck the Diwali cards with porridge on the cover of the book. And every time the warders would come, he would insinuate that this was his holy book, his Bible called the Bhagavad Gita. And up till today, 30 years later, that Shakespeare is still covered with those Diwali cards.
So it was disguised, but how did it get circulated within the prison?
Well, what Sunny Venkatratnam would do, he would often lend it to a prisoner. And one of the prerequisites was that those prisoners would sign off on the section that most appealed to them. And of course, they were going to be there for years. So people would pore over the Shakespeare, read it, study it, discuss it, and often talk about what was important to them. When I followed the story of Shakespeare on Robben Island, I thought people would just be bored, they wouldn't like this, they'll see this as Eurocentric. But if you see the way people thought about it, what they signed off. In fact, over 20 years after Kwedi Nkalipi, one of the people who signed it, left Robben Island, I tracked him down in Cape Town and I asked him about Shakespeare, and he remembered what he had signed as if it was yesterday, because Shakespeare spoke to him.
What significance did these plays have to the prisoners?
Many of the prisoners who came to Robben Island from the Transkei, and one of the reasons that they came to Robben Island was they were fighting land dispossession, and many of them read King Lear. And Lear is about dispossession. Lear is about enclosure. Lear is about the loss of land. Lear is about having power and then losing it, and then only understanding what power can be and how it can be abused. They were also alone in prison, bereft of family, feeling betrayed. And there's a favorite phrase that some of them use: they felt Lear-like, alone in the world. So these things were real. They weren't just abstracted notions that they just read for the aesthetic value, but it spoke immediately to them.
So it was read for political education and not just enjoyment?
No, it was extreme political education, in the sense of that many societies have people who rule, many societies have people who abuse, and many societies have a sense of righteousness. And it also taught them many other things, to have fun, to joke, the role of the clown, the abuse of power. And for example, Neville Alexander, who actually had a PhD, he loved the sonnets because for him the sonnets talked about timelessness. And what did time mean? And there on Robben Island, where you were so controlled, where you have a sentence of 10 or 20 years, you start thinking about time. And for him, the sonnets made that real.
What was Madiba's opinion on Shakespeare's works?
It's a wonderful quote at the back of my book, you know, and it's simple as Madiba could be simple. You know, Shakespeare speaks to all of us.
Now, on that note, do you think Shakespeare is still relevant today?
I was speaking to high school students, and these are the examples I gave them, or some of the examples I gave them. You know, this, in the age of doublespeak, when you don't know what politicians are really saying, this comes from Lear. The weight of this sad time we must obey. Speak what we feel, not what we ought to say. Not what we ought to say. And so, this is an example. At a time when statues and monuments are being defaced, why do we bother about trying to gather history into inanimate objects when it is words, our history that we write down that will remain forever, that can't be changed? And Sonnet 55 says, "Not marble nor the gilded monuments of princes shall outlive this powerful rhyme."
Robben Island wasn't only a jail in the physical aspect, it also intended to imprison the mind. The apartheid authorities may have thought they had the prisoners under their control, but they didn't. And Elizabethan playwrights gave comfort and inspiration to Madiba and his comrades. This unusual aspect of the Robben Island story tells us a lot about Mandela, as well as Shakespeare.